Humility, equity, anti-racism, lateral kindness, inclusivity, and trauma-informed, these are key aspects that we as a collective are asked to bring into our everyday lives, our work lives, so we can share space with each other, with humility, with kindness. I'm so excited to bring in amazing voices, social change leaders in the Prince George area, so that together we can hear about why it matters, what got them interested in what they represent in the community, and maybe even some tips for other leaders in the community of how to best serve all people. I'm really looking forward to this journey together. Welcome to another episode of Hope and Healing in the North with myself, Auroara Leigh. We are covering humility as the gateway for unlearning and relearning. That is the H in the acronym HEAL IT. And I am sitting down with Heidi Reeves, Prince George's local parenting coach, who does a lot of unlearning and relearning in her own way, working with parents and families who are working through generational cycle breaking. Super admirable work. But I think that you'll find as we cover our discussion that the unlearning and relearning cycle applies for everyone in all contexts and walks of life. And I think that you'll be inspired in some way to self-reflect, even if it comes to reparenting your own inner child, so that we have this shared collective vision for the future of how we co-regulate as humans with one another. Thanks for tuning in, and I do want to note that we are on the sacred traditional territory of Lheidli T'enneh. Heidi, welcome. We're talking about humility as the gateway for unlearning and relearning, the H in Heal It. What got you interested in doing the work that you do? So you're a parenting coach, you've been an early childhood educator, you got into early childhood development and learning about that. I really find your work fascinating. I think you're amazingly intellectual, and I'm so happy to have you on the show today. I think that the people in Prince George could really benefit from some of the things you have to say about unlearning. Unlearning is so important for all of us, every single human being. We can benefit from unlearning. And this is your whole thing. Like, you're wanting to help parents unlearn generational cycles for the children that they're raising, and to go, oh, wow, like, it's so inspiring to unlearn. And so I know that you have this passion for it, and I'm so curious to hear more about that passion. Like, where did that come from?
I am very passionate about it. My very favorite thing in the whole world is everything to do with early childhood. And when I was growing up, it was not the best childhood, so I have an ACE score of 6. And I took early childhood education in the 90s, and I learned incredible new information that just blew my mind about how children develop, how children think, how to guide their behavior, and how to parent, basically, but in the context of a childcare setting. And I was just so inspired that I thought that everybody should know this. Like, I wanted everybody to know, all the parents to know how all this information about children and how to talk to them so that they will listen, which is the name of an awesome book, and to listen so they will talk, and to guide their behavior without behaviorism, like spanking, timeout, and stuff like that, the 1, 2, 3 magic and things like that, and that there's an awesome, better way.
So you mentioned you have an ACE score of 6, and that's the Adverse Childhood Experiences Study and Score. And so when you took the early childhood education training and you were inspired by these other methods, is that because of ways that you were raised and you saw that there's a different way that could work? Is that healing for you?
Yes. Actually, when I was a babysitter, when I was young in the 80s, it was still okay to slap a child's hand when they were going to be touching something that they weren't supposed to touch. And so when I learned of all these new ways, then I had to, as this session is about, unlearn and relearn ways of thinking about children. So society has come through stages with parenting. Back in the day, it was spanking, and then children were seen and not heard. And the way that people saw children in childcare was different. Then in the 90s, it really came out to be child-centered care. And that was about children, having respect for children, and not using behaviorism techniques, which are spanking and timeout and things that are like the way you train a dog. But those techniques have grown from the 90s to now, and society, because it was so ingrained in everybody, to the way that you're supposed to teach respect to children in heavy-handed authoritarian means, that parents had a hard time. They knew that they weren't supposed to be using these old techniques, but then they didn't know what to do instead. And so parents have been floundering for this entire time, from the 90s until now, with this mishmash of maybe spanking and yelling sometimes, and then trying to teach them about feelings and connectedness at other times. And it is just, this parenting soup has ended up with a lot of mixed up children.
And how do we ask for that help and knowledge, right? And that's where that humility piece often needs to come in. So there can be barriers to approaching, going, actually, I don't know what I don't know. I know that I don't want to do this. Like you said, I think that's really profound, and a lot of people relate to that. So we shouldn't be doing this, but what do we do instead? And what can fill that gap in between? And what kind of whole cycle of unlearning and relearning between those 2 points, and where to go and where to turn to? I think this topic is huge when it comes to parenting. I think that the world is in that same exact process now in a number of things, like from all contexts and all walks of life, we're unlearning and relearning.
Society is desperate for a change right now. The place that it has really persevered from the time of the Victorians and colonization, the Victorians, and between that and the Wild West and the New Frontier, and everything was about being a rugged individualist, and you can't ask for help, and you have to do everything yourself. And if you don't, there's something wrong with you. And if you fail, it must be something to do with your character. It can't be anything else. And
we still see that today.
That's what I'm saying. This has persisted since the Victorian times and industrialization and the Wild West. The whole era has persisted to this day. And now, if you think about that beliefs that people have today about themselves and about parenting came from 150 years ago. That it should wake you up that this is a different world, and those people were wrong to begin with, and they of course didn't know anything that we know today about neurobiology. So what we need to do is unlearn all this last almost 200 years of generationally being taught dysfunction, dysregulation, and I don't want to throw out this word because it's so overused, but toxicity in the way that people think about themselves and other people in society and their children.
And emotion. Suppress emotion. Be perfect.
Yeah.
Don't be flawed. It is okay to be flawed. And
don't ask for help.
Right.
You can't ask for help. There must be something wrong with you. Nobody cares anyway. Suck it up.
So where do you see that showing up in your work? As you're wanting to connect with parents locally, you're wanting to connect with those who are ready to unlearn and create new cycles for their families. Where are you seeing this fear and this rugged individualism that you say? Do you see it where people aren't connecting with the work? How are you feeling that impact?
One of the groups of parents that I particularly love working with is the group of parents who are breaking the cycles, the cycle breaker parents who can see that the way that they were raised and the way that their parents were raised and trauma that has been inflicted, not only poor parenting and like poor parenting is handed down, but other people have actual trauma that is handed down that has created worse situations. Mm-hmm. And these people are the cycle breakers. They are looking back at what needs to change and they are looking for how to do it. And those are the people that I really love working with.
Yeah. And what tips do you give to people who are just starting out on their journey of they're not really sure, maybe they've piqued their interest, they know they want to break cycles, but they don't know where to start? What kind of tips do you give for those folks?
The very first thing they need is courage and bravery. Because people who, they are still stuck in the belief that they need to do it themselves. They might see that there's something wrong with what's happening, but they need to be able to have, like you say, the humility to stop and reflect, and then have the bravery and courage to seek something new. Mm. And they have to change their mindset, a paradigm shift of what was needs to be unlearned, and there needs to be a shift into a new way of thinking.
And that's something one can be proud of in doing.
1000%.
That they're so incredibly strong and brave to do that. And we all do. We all need it. I think one of those individualistic kind of offsets is that sometimes people think, if I'm doing this, like everyone else has it figured out, which is not true. Everyone needs to unlearn in some way. That's just the way it is. There have been these disconnecting colonial frameworks that have been passed down to absolutely everyone, and we could all benefit from unlearning. And it is the brave people that are picking that up, talking about it, facing it, being able to be self-aware enough about what the cycles are, having those conversations. And that's something to be incredibly proud of.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. I have great respect and reverence for the parents who can reach out and ask for the help. Mm-hmm. They have the bravery and the humility to see past themselves and look for the future of their children and their children. Like these cycle breakers, you think that, they're just doing this in the moment and they're just trying to change something that happened to them. But it is so much more than that. What they're doing is not only for themselves and their child, but it is for their all future generations after that.
And when I think about parents that are apprehensive to come forward and ask for help, there's been a historical reason often why it's unsafe to do. So if you think about certain things like the MCFD or fear, these are rational fears that parents can have of being afraid to say, hey, I know that I am wanting to repeat this because it happened to me. I don't want to repeat it, but if I verbalize it, I might get in trouble. And so that fear is real in people to stop them and prevent them from coming forward to ask for help. And I think it's a big cause of why people shut down and don't, because prior to colonial contact, families were able to have love and connection and support. Prior to residential schools, families were able to rear their children in really sacred ways. But the thing is, that governing structure has harmed a lot of people and continues to. It can also help a lot of people, but people don't know who they can turn to for help when they say this, because they could all of a sudden have a report done or something intervened, right?
If they go to the wrong person.
Yeah. Or it just happens to be a social worker who's not seeing with eyes of compassion.
Exactly.
And then they are fighting now for 3 years for their kids. So I'm not wanting to inflame fears through talking about this, but I think we have to point that out, that there's legitimate reasons sometimes why parents withhold. And so there almost needs to be like a change in the system and the structure of compassion around saying, okay, we want to inspire generational cycle healers and warriors and warrioresses, but it needs to be safe for them to do. They need to outcry for help of, I want to do these things and say, oh, this is what happened to me and I don't want this to happen and continue, but it needs to be kept in a really solid container.
Yeah, well, the problem is that they might be talking to somebody who has the old views and still is thinking in this old toxic colonial way that is 150, 200 years old, and they're still got that thing playing in their head and they're judging other people by it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So how do we help to inspire social change leaders that aren't, maybe they're social workers, maybe they're youth workers, maybe they're actively working in the Prince Georgian area. And so when you say the old way, what would you inspire for them for the new way? What would you want to share with them?
Professional development. Yeah, especially if they took their training some time ago. The brain, the neurological and neurodevelopmental research in the last 15 years has been phenomenal. And as most of us know, it takes quite a bit of time for research to get to practice. So they might not have even been taught that if they were in school in the last 15 years.
Okay.
So they have to go seek that out. One thing that I highly recommend is for them to, any professionals, to take a course called Brain Story, which they can find links to it. Just type in Brain Story.
The Alberta Family Institute, it'll pop up. Yeah.
Yeah. There's links to it from the Harvard Child Development website. There's links to it from Oxford. There's links to it from UBC. It is a highly renowned, important program.
Yeah. Yeah, they gathered all of the experts in the current brain research so that everyone could come together with a fundamental common narrative around brain development and how it can lead to certain things such as addictions or violence, but it's a symptom, from these initial early childhood years. And so I agree with you, it's done phenomenal and it's free for everyone.
By learning these ideas and research, that in itself will break down the old ideas that they had. And that learning these new things, they will change. They will unlearn what they were thinking about people, addictions, childhood trauma, the brain architecture, how you get to be resilient, what children need to develop into strong, resilient adults. That is what you will learn from this, and you will absolutely learn that it has, that not asking for help and thinking that you are a rugged individualist has no place.
So if a youth is expressing symptoms or of what they've been through in their childhood, it does not mean judge a youth. So I still see that old paradigm today where there's so much stereotyping, discrimination, even of young people. They're having a normal response to a not normal thing. But we also have an unwell society. So you have people expressing symptoms from an unwell environment. That's a completely normal response. So to realize that, to validate that, and to say, hey, what kind of environmental context does that individual need? And a series of individuals need, everyone needs. What kind of environment is that? And to start really digging deep. Because if we have those on the front line that are judgmental, how much help is that person actually getting?
Yeah, none. And I've been through that. And one of the things that they say nowadays that is great is not to think about what's wrong with you, but what happened to you.
Mm-hmm.
And when parents come to me, you were talking about worrying about them being reported or whatever. If they come to me and they are in recovery from addictions, or they have mental illnesses or personality disorders, or recovering from a postpartum depression or anxiety, or even psychosis, like these things happen to so many families. And by coming to me, I am not in the old paradigm. So I don't think about, oh, this person is a terrible parent and I'm going to have to report them because, oh my God, look what they've been doing. They've been yelling at their kid. That might be something that you have to be careful of with certain other people. I don't know. You have to size that up.
So maybe knowing who people are that they can connect with, and they will be continually encouraged along the way. And like anyone that's climbing a mountain, you might fall back a few steps. And then you need that support network. You need those cheerleaders that say, hey, yeah, keep going. I believe in you. And then they keep going. And that there isn't that perfection that's expected. And I think that's a big barrier of not being able to humble. So the ego is to preserve, right? It's to protect, it's to preserve. The ego is so important. And so that's why it clings so much. It's so hard for humility to be that necessary step for parents, but also for many, for leaders, for just every single walk in life, every single person in life. The ego will cling to what it knows, what it's sure it knows. The ego thinks that there's right and wrong and there's black and white. And that's stored over analysis, over experience. When I walked down there 5 times, that one thing happened. So if I walk down there again, it definitely will. And that ego is just that catalog of information. And if all of a sudden someone's not sure, that's a very vulnerable place to be. Okay, this person wants to come out and connect with you, say, and they're inspired. Maybe they have a couple children, maybe they have a partner, maybe they don't. All they know is they want to approach something new. This is now a new pathway. They already know the outcomes of all the times they went down another pathway, which could have been, I'm going to grin and bear it and do it alone and hide some of my symptoms, hide that I have postpartum depression, but maybe now they want to venture out. That's super vulnerable. Like you said, courage is needed. But what if something negative happens when they withdraw and they go back to the old pattern because they're not sure? So what can help them to keep that momentum going? Because those things happen no matter what. When people are unlearning and relearning, they will confront the old paradigms that aren't being helpful. That is going to happen. They will get maybe better and better at finding those people that carry the new paradigm, and they'll learn how to find them in their communities. But they're going to bump into that, right? And so what can give them hope? What could give them hope to keep going? What could give them hope to keep being willing to humble and seek help and vulnerability through that process? What do you think will maintain that hope for them?
Thinking about the future. So part of it is building your own resilience. So you need to find self-care for one thing. Self-care isn't a bubble bath with a glass of wine once a month or whatever. Like the cliche ideas of self-care. Self-care is something that you do all the time, even throughout the day, but definitely every day. Things such as making time to listen to your favorite music, making time for a little bit of mindfulness, making time to think positive thoughts about yourself, and letting go of negative thoughts. Other ways to be resilient are being grateful, remembering what you're grateful for, things that are going well. You need to have the resilience, and one of the things is persistence and connection. You need connection with other people. You need to grow a support group around you of like-minded people. You can do that easily these days on Facebook by finding groups that are like-minded individuals. And if you think about the future, keep your mind on your children and your grandchildren, keep a sense of purpose, and to keep yourself going forward and feel strong in yourself. Just believe in yourself. All these things are things you would want to teach your children. You have to start with yourself. And that is what will keep you moving forward one step after the other.
Okay. That's wonderful. Hope and vision. Are you willing to share anything about your unlearning journey and what inspired you at what points and how you got through that with your own resilience?
From learning new ways to think about children and work with children, it didn't just stop in the 90s. I didn't just learn it and then I've been doing the same thing. I have been learning continuously all the way along because things change. So you think you're doing the right thing and then there's more research comes out and you change and you grow. So I've had this continuous journey of learning more and changing old ideas and moving forward with new and better things as they come up. But the thing is that it is not as simple as that. Every time you're learning new things, it's not just that, okay, I learned it. Now I'm perfect dealing with these children. Okay, yes, I know exactly what I'm supposed to do. I know exactly what I'm supposed to say, and I will say it in every single situation that comes up with every child everywhere all the time. It is a constant, I don't want to say struggle, but it's a constant thing that you have to always be thinking about. And so when I am dealing with a child and I have not said the right thing, and then I go and I reflect, and what can I do about that situation next time?
Aren't children the best mirrors for us? They are just the best mirrors for us to do our own inner work. Like when you say you stop and you reflect, I shouldn't have said that, right? That right there is your own unlearning, and you come back to, where did I learn that from? Like, I learned that from my past when that experience happened to me when I was a child. Like, children are the absolute best mirrors for inner work.
Yes.
And it takes humility to go, just because I'm an adult doesn't mean I'm the expert. Actually, this little being here is more the expert because they're more attuned to themselves and they're more attuned to love and connection.
Children are themselves, like you said, they live in their amygdala. They don't have so many connections to their neocortex to be thinking rationally all the time, and that's our job, to be co-regulating with them to help them learn how to regulate themselves. But back to self-reflection, that is a big part of unlearning and relearning. And you have, in order to do that, because not everybody does that, you have to have the humility to know that, yeah, I screw up. I'm not this perfect person. So people aren't perfect. Parents aren't perfect. Caregivers aren't perfect. Nobody's perfect. Nurses aren't perfect. Nobody is perfect.
No.
And so when parents come to me, for example, there's no perfect parents, and they don't have to worry about me thinking that they are supposed to be, or even if I teach them, okay, this is what you're supposed to do. Doop-a-doop-a-doop. But you can't do that every time, and it takes time to learn these things. And it doesn't just come, it's, okay, I'm going to learn how to ski. And I'm going to sit down and watch this video, and I'm going to learn all these things on this piece of paper, and this is how you ski. And then they go up to the mountain with their skis, and they're on the slopes, and they're like, okay, now I know what to do. And they fall and crash and get a broken leg. And they have to keep practicing. It's the same with everything. And one thing to keep in mind with parent coaching, or even if you don't get a parent coach and you're just learning it yourself and you're doing it your own research, to think that elite athletes need coaches. Elite athletes need to learn more. And top CEOs hire coaches and learn and learn. There's no end to learning. We will never know everything there is to learn.
100%. I feel the hang-ups that happen in our society are when adults forget that. They have this hat on where they think they have to know everything, and they aren't willing to.
That's very adolescent. I know everything, right?
And to not be able to self-reflect. So if a social worker can't go back and self-reflect, oh, why was I so stern with that client? What was I triggered with? That kind of thing. Then they just maintain that connection and that way of being with those people. It can really create deficits, I think, in where we're going as a collective and where we could be going as a collective. But that's just one example. In a boardroom meeting, when huge, incredibly important conversations are being had about policies or directions for the community, and someone is stuck in that ego mindset of knowing everything or not willing to humble or self-reflect of why they're triggered, what childhood experience is activated for them as they're continuing to converse, and then they don't want to admit that they were wrong, so they just leave it, and then they just go, nope, we're not doing that. And it affects the whole. It affects everyone that trickles down from that meeting and that decision. And I think that the capacity for humility could change all of our lives.
That is 100% real, especially when you said that it comes from childhood to the way that they're acting in the boardroom, from what they learned when they were a little kid.
Yeah.
There's direct correlation there.
There could be an implicit memory that's brought up from a tone that someone has with them, right? Or it could be like, I get this a lot if I'm a strong woman who's quite confident or solid with myself and I'm able to assert and express my needs, but they have a belief system that if a woman's like that, they're whatever, then that activates from their past and they're all of a sudden presenting with me their stuff instead of us just conversing as human beings. That's just one example, but there could be a myriad of things going on that's all stored implicitly. So when we're able to circle back to biases, assumptions, belief systems, core belief systems, that is so huge. And it all gets laid down in early childhood.
Yep.
The way someone holds themselves, carries themselves, walks, that's all part of the information we're taking in. And then how we relate to the world. And so because of this Victorian era colonial mindset and dogmatic things that have been just like ingrained for generations, there's such a heavy imprinting that then gets socially conditioned and passed along. And so if we're really going into a new kind of paradigm, after all the systems have admitted that they're pretty broken, so we know that, we've admitted that as a collective now, which is wonderful, but now what? And so that now what is, how do we gain the rapport and ability to go, okay, I'm going to be humble as I walk into this board meeting. I'm going to be humble as I meet with this family if I'm a social worker. I'm going to be humble if I'm a nurse. I don't know everything, and I'm aware of my biases. I'm aware of my assumptions and core beliefs. And I think that once we are there and we can help each other get there, then we're actually going to see this ripple effect, and we will be able to have safer spaces where people come forward and they say, hey, I'm yelling at my kids and I don't want to. I didn't realize that violence that I experienced is stored inside of me. Now it's coming out of me and it's impacting my kids. Now my kids are in a freeze response and they're going to school and they're safe at school, but as soon as they get disciplined a little bit for their behavior, they go into a freeze response at school, and they're like, it's just this whole cycle. And then they get medicated when really they don't deserve to be medicated. They're having a normal response to their nervous systems being activated to what they've been exposed to. And so once we can get to that space where we can all be sharing about these things, then we can say, oh, we don't have a sick society anymore. We have a society that's now healing. And I just love that you are part of that conversation. I love the work that you're doing. And I hope that people will reach out to you more. And it's Hilltop Parenting and Coaching, right? Yes. And what kind of other wisdom do you want for people to glean from you from this episode? If you could give your top kind of tips from just being inspired from any of this conversation, what do you want to leave the viewers with?
To be brave and to forget the old ideas that they need to be an island, and to build a community around themselves, and to look to the future and to learn, be open.
And where can they find you?
Me?
Yeah.
So my website is called thelittlehilltopco.com. I'm on Facebook under Hilltop Parent Coaching.
Can you go into organizations too and lead workshops? Do you do that?
I absolutely can. I can lead professional development workshops in childcares. I can do workshops and talks for other community groups that want either for their parents or their workers to learn more about things such as self-regulation. And I'm not talking about self-control, I'm talking about being able to regulate their emotions, and not by self-control. It's a whole big thing. The Shanker Self-Reg. I strongly encourage people to look up selfreg.ca to find Shanker Self-Reg and look at the resources there. That's a big thing. For people who aren't coming to me to do that, and look up Circle of Security, and you can see those videos online for both on YouTube for both of those things.
And I think this speaks to resources not just for parents. Like, this is reparenting for adults. There's a whole stage I think adults are in right now where they can learn those same things, self-reg. That could be a resource that helps them and not just helps other young people. There is a young person inside each of us, and wherever we have stopped developing or had stalls in developing, we could still coach, parenting coach our own inner child, and those resources can help anyone.
Actually, once you get into self-reg, you'll realize that you can't teach a child self-regulation without doing it for yourself.
Yeah.
That's actually a huge part of what I do, is that parents can't just learn how to parent their child. They have to relearn a lot of things about themselves and basically parent their inner child to move past their beliefs and find out what their triggers are and where they came from and why they react in certain ways they do with their children. And that is like getting to the root of the issues is what helps them regulate and co-regulate with their children and connect.
It's big work, but it's the most important work on the planet today. Thank you so much for the time together, sharing a bit of your wisdom with us all. We're really fortunate. Thank you.
Thank you very much for having me.
Yeah.